All right. Well, it is the top of the hour. Welcome. For the sake of the recording, this is Wes Fryer. Today's December the 8th, 2011. This is Tell a Story in 5 Photos. And I am excited to report that so far this adventure of doing the 12 days of playing with media has, I think, been fairly successful as far as being able to do some video conferences along with some recordings. I've been working on editing some of my recordings, and some of these I've kind of recorded separately, and like today's, we're doing this during a live video conference. So just like we have for the other sessions, we've got a handout, and if you want to go to the website wfryer.me/5photos, that's the number 5 followed by photos, that will forward you to the page for today on the Google site. And if you noticed at the top yesterday or earlier as we were looking at these, there is a link on that page that says handouts. And when you click that breadcrumb link, you can actually see a table of contents of all the sessions that we're doing this month. So I am excited for you all to be back. That's a good sign. And let me ask, what have you all done with digital photography? Are any of you digital budding digital photographers? You love digital photography. What kind of things have you all done with digital photography up to this point? Not just with students, but on a personal level too. Have you shared any of your digital photos online at this point anywhere, or do you pretty much keep them on your computer and then print them, or just use them locally? Okay. I was just hearing a public radio program called The Story this week that was talking about Joplin, Missouri and the tornado. And there was a lady who has been dedicating almost all her spare time to bringing the photographs back to the families, because some of those pictures actually traveled 100 miles and ended up, in people's yards and blown up against fences and all kinds of things. And living as we do in Tornado Alley, I think about this and think about how important memories are. And what we're going to talk about today, as far as Tell a Story in 5 Photos, connects real directly, obviously to photography. And it also ties to the power of story and how important it is that we recognize how our brains are wired to remember stories, and how visual images can be powerful, and how no matter what content area we teach, we have the opportunity to ask students to use visual media, and in some cases to use visual media absent other kinds of media forms. So no audio or video, just pictures. And we can build on top of those things. Once we've got digital pictures of an event, we can, build a book based on those pictures. We can make a slideshow. We could make a movie. We can do all kinds of different things with them. I will later today, because I've almost finished editing it, be publishing a 60-minute podcast. And since you all at Western have been such great participants this week, I didn't probably do nearly enough marketing that I probably needed to do for the video conference side of this, but I'll go ahead and send you all a free download link for it. It's my session on iPhoneography. So it's just about, using the iPhone and different apps for taking pictures, editing the pictures, and then sharing the pictures. So the session today is really going to be oriented towards, a class situation. And I guess what I'll share first is kind of a little bit of how I got into this idea of doing a story in 5 photos, and then we'll talk a little bit about visual images and some of the resources that I've used teaching students specifically about doing PowerPoint presentations and trying to help them not abuse PowerPoint, not use PowerPoint as a text environment, use it as a visual media, and become powerful communicators with media. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over here to my my computer, and there's a Flickr group that a friend of mine in St. Louis, Karen Montgomery, started a number of years ago called Tell a Story with 5 Photos for Educators. And there's a bunch of these examples that people have done. I'm going to just search in here for a pumpkin one. And so here's one that she did a while back, and this is just 5 pictures, not any text, not any images. So there's picture 1, here's picture 2, picture 3, picture 4, and picture 5. So she had modeled this project off of another Flickr group that was called, I think, just Tell a Story in 5 Frames. But one of the ones that won was from a zoo, and it was with a male lion and a female lion. And she thought, well, maybe we don't want to point all the teachers to this group. Let's set up a new group that'll be for educators, and we'll moderate it. It wasn't horribly inappropriate, but anyway, that's kind of how that project started. And as we were talking about visual images and, you know, how important it is, number one, to play with media, and that's part of the genesis of my book, and thinking about that was we got to find time to use media and to use these tools and to practice. It can be a fun challenge to say, you don't have anything else except 5 pictures. Now, if you want to take more pictures, that's fine, but you're going to just choose 5, and then I want you to tell me a story visually with those images. So that's an example of one of Karen's, and one of the ones that I did was this one. And this was my daughter, Rachel, who, when she was 3, we took, and let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit so you can see this better. We took for her to get her first haircut. So here she is sitting in the chair about to get her first haircut, and she's photo number 2. I guess I'm not supposed to say anything here. So photo 3, photo 4, and photo 5, and she's all done there. So very, very cute, right? And so the thought was, you know, now that we've got this photo, what if we put her voice with it? What if she's describing that? And so while in this session we're going to focus really just on the 5-photo story project and how you can do that with students, how they can turn it in via email with a Posterous blog, and you can manage this. We're going to talk about all that stuff. I'm going to show you just for this one kind of the progression, because this was in 2007, and my friend Karen said, Wes, why don't you get Rachel to talk about these pictures and make a voice thread? And so the next link that's on your handout there is to a voice thread digital story, which we made, and I'm not going to play this version of it, but VoiceThread is a wonderful tool that has a free model. You can have so many free, and then you can pay and have your students with your own accounts. For a college standpoint, students can go ahead and just register for their own accounts, and I forget how many they can create, but basically there's plenty for them to do it for free and not have to pay, if they're going to do a class assignment. But this website lets you upload images, and then you comment with audio, or you can comment with video, and then other people can comment as well. So to kind of streamline the process of playing this, I made a little screencast and basically just played Rachel's part and then a few comments that some other people made too. So that's linked on your handout as well. And this is called, this is just this is a 2-minute excerpt. So we'll watch this real quick. Before I do this, have you all had the situation happen where you're showing a video on YouTube and there's some really distracting and possibly inappropriate related videos? Have you had that happen before? That's good if that hasn't happened to you before. It's happened to me before. And so one of the things I'm going to model doing right now is I'm going to use a free website that's called QuietTube. The word QuietTube. And the website is just quiettube.com. What's going to happen, I'm here on this video, and I'm going to click a little button bar that I have for QuietTube, and it is going to strip out all the comments, all the related videos, and it just leaves the video that I'm looking at and the play button. So there, I guess there's a little ad at the bottom in text, but it's not very distracting. So it's a free tool, wonderful to talk about as far as just sharing video. And we're going to give this a try and see how our connection is today. I'm probably going to play about 30 seconds of it, pause it, and I'm going to ask you if this is playing okay. It's not full motion video or something, so it hopefully is going to sound okay. Or maybe you can just give me a thumbs up. But let's take a look at this. And this is going to be, I think, about 3 of the slides that Rachel talked about. And then we'll see at the end some people that left comments. And I may interject and read because there's some that they put in with text.
This is about me getting my new haircut. what happened? I wanted my hair short. So I wanted a short haircut, so they cut it. While I was getting my hair washed, had a smile on me, so the haircut washed my hair.
How did it feel?
It feels so nice, so it feels warm, so we did it last night and I got suckers.
So now we're going to the last slide.
And I'm all done and it looks so beautiful and I like it.
Okay.
That's a nice story. I really enjoyed it.
Rachel, thank you for sharing this great haircut story with me. This was so wonderful to come home and find in my mailbox after such a long day. And you're very lucky that your daddy does take so many photographs and that you're learning how to use these tools. You are on the cutting edge, kiddo. Get it? Cutting edge? Okay, take care.
Hello Rachel, I'm a teacher in New Zealand and I can't wait to show my students your fabulous story about your haircut. Thank you so much for sharing it, and by the way, you look absolutely gorgeous.
And you know, she could have written "you look gorgeous," but it wouldn't have been the same as gorgeous in that, Kiwi New Zealand accent. How fun that is. So having that experience, realizing, wow, this is a powerful thing, because all we were doing was taking pictures, but then we told a story, and then we put our voice with it, and then we shared it out. And that voice thread, as of today, has had over 66,000 views and over 1,500 comments. So lots and lots of people have connected with that and seen that. And I don't think it's compelling just because, oh, wow, lots of people saw it. But I mean, that's a precious memory for us to have of what Rachel's voice sounded like at age 3, and a powerful example, I guess, of storytelling and how something really simple can actually turn out to be kind of compelling. So the idea of having teachers and students use their cameras and tell a story in 5 photos kind of came from this. And last fall, I was teaching at the University of North Texas as an adjunct and getting my dissertation proposal written. And I met a fellow named Kirby Alexander. And Kirby had done similar projects at the University of Virginia where he was teaching, except the twist on it was they sort of did it as a visual charades activity. And so they said to whatever groups that they had, break into teams, 2 or 3, give them some time. You got 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I want you to pick a fairy tale, and you will have 5 photos to help us guess what that fairy tale is. All right, ready, go. And so people are going to go and do that, and then you also set up a way for them to turn in their pictures and do that. So the next phase of this is the link that I've got on there for what's called a 5-photo story blog. And I created this for free on the website posterous.com. And so we'll look at a couple examples of this. These are, I think these are teachers in New Hampshire. So here's photo 1, here's photo 2, here's photo 3, photo 4, and photo 5. And of course, the book is, it's Cinderella. Now, some of these, now it looks like that one got in here twice. Let me see if I can find another good one. That was some people didn't do a fairy tale. Some people set this up a little bit differently. I did this in Montana this last summer, or this actually may have been in January, and some people used some pictures. This one was just called Hiking in Montana, and they had a series of different pictures that they put in. For some reason, these particular pictures didn't make a album that was as nicely browsable as that other one was. So this is a compelling idea, and there are good reasons for it. And we'll talk a little bit about those, but it also can be a little bit complicated. With some teachers and students that I've worked with, more teachers, this activity that we do in a workshop, for some is the first time they've ever taken a digital camera, plugged it into the computer, had to browse and get the pictures, had to move the pictures off the digital camera, then had to get those pictures to me somehow. And the easiest way that I've found to do that is with email. Now, not 100% of folks are you doing email attachments, but in a lot of organizations, it's over 90% of folks are comfortable sending email attachments. And so one of the websites that I'm going to show you today, the primary one for facilitating these, is called Posterous.com. It's free and it works through email. You simply send an email address to the address that you get for your site, and then all those pictures are available in a queue for you to approve as a teacher. And that's something else as educators I highly encourage. In fact, I don't think anybody in the United States should have a class blog unless you moderate the content that goes up there. If folks are anonymous and if they're not, being watched, sometimes people act differently, and we don't want, disastrous things to be happening where people get cyberbullied or something inappropriate gets put on our class site. And thankfully, it's pretty easy today to set up a site that's moderated so that doesn't happen. So that's kind of where we're going. I'm going to show you how to facilitate that, how students can be turning those photos in. But before we jump into that, let me give you a little talk time. I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Talk with each other about that activity. How do you see an activity like a 5-photo story fitting in maybe to one of the classes that you're teaching? You have 60 seconds. Go. Right, because it's active learning, right? They've got to make a lot of choices and a lot of decisions. They don't necessarily have to be in the pictures. They can get other people and they can ask for permission. We're going to share this online. You can have all kinds of things you take pictures for. You can get out Legos, you can get out Lincoln Logs, you can get out finger puppets. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can take pictures of. But this whole idea that we're going to create this and you're going to have a challenge, and that whole thing of the charades and the fairy tales is just one example. There's all kinds of ways you can give students a challenge. But when you have a limited number, I don't remember the exact slogan, but my wife loves the shop in IKEA, it's in the Dallas area, and it's for small spaces, and they've got all this cool furniture, and they've got some kind of a slogan about, limits lead to creativity. And that's kind of here too. You've only got 5 pictures. You're not going to be able to do 20. You can't do video. You can't put your voice with it. You're limited. But in the constraints of that, people can be very creative and come up with some good stuff. And the process of them having to talk with each other, having to make decisions, having to figure stuff out, and also knowing that they're coming back to share it in front of their peers. That whole dynamic, can lead to some healthy competition and to people, trying to elevate their game and maybe work a little harder and learn a little more than they might if they were just sort of on their own, doing their assignment and turning it in where nobody else saw it. So those links are on our handout under the 5-photo story site examples. I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of the power of visual images and introduce you to 2 awesome concepts that closely relate to this, called Presentation Zen, a book by Gar Reynolds and a great blog, a video called Life After Death by PowerPoint, which I won't show you the whole thing, but the link is there, and then this model called Pechakucha, which is a model that started in Japanese bars when geeks got together and wanted to share things with each other really quick. And so it's a 20 by 20 model where you have 20 pictures for 20 seconds. And I've used that model as I've taught multimedia presentation or PowerPoint to my pre-service teachers. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to this link called The Power of Visual Images. And this is a link to the images that I've marked as favorites on Flickr. I mean, there is all kinds of stuff here. This is my dad when he was a cadet at the Air Force Academy at Travis Air Force Base in 1961. Okay, so this has obviously personal significance to me. There are some images that I really like when I'm talking about playing with media. This is a circus tent that was taken in New Zealand. Actually, it looks like it might be in Christchurch. But it's a Creative Commons licensed image that we'll talk about, which means people have the author, the creator of this, has given permission for us to use this, and as long as we give credit to them, and we can even republish it commercially. This is the license that's here. It says you're free to share, copy, distribute, and transmit the work, and to remix it, and to even make commercial use of it. So I could even make a T-shirt legally that had this picture on it and say, "Come play with media," and have the web address, and that permission has been given. Now I'm usually not going to make it commercial, use it commercially, but that is a very important concept that we'll talk about with copyright. Here's another one. I love a quotation by Alan Kay, where he says, "The predominant tool in the classroom defines the predominant learning task." And a predominant tool we have is the pencil. So if I'm going to make that point in a presentation, it is much better for me to put a visual image which speaks to that concept up on the screen rather than simply having text up there. And one of the great things about Flickr, and I'm just going to right-click on this picture, is that I have multiple sizes. So here's the original, over 2,000 pixels wide and 1,700 pixels high. That's probably more quality than I really need, but I can crop in and get some real high quality images here and leverage the power of images. I think every time I'm in the grocery store checking out and I'm looking at the magazines that, boy, I want my kids, especially my girls, to know for a fact that none of these models look that good on, in real life. Every single one of them has been airbrushed. Probably guys too. I mean, we are seeing something fake. You're not seeing reality when you look at that. That's a really important thing for everyone to realize, but especially young ladies, when we think about body image and identity and all these kinds of things. And so using images and communicating, you can't go into, have you all been to McDonald's lately? You don't have to admit that, I guess, if you don't want to, but you know how they've in Altus too, right? Have they revamped to the Mac Cafe theme? You may not have been in. I'm pretty sure they have, 'cause I think they've done it nationwide. And, the images that they have are just carefully crafted. If you go into a Chili's or an IHOP, the menu, they've got these pictures out. Why do they do that? Well, they know that our brain is focused, is highly focused on images. And a couple years ago, maybe it was about a year ago, Bernie Dodge, who is a professor at San Diego State, actually corrected me on Twitter and helped straighten me out here, because I had been quoting a person called Linnell Burmark, Dr. Burmark, who had talked about how many more times faster our eyes process something than our ears, and it's not fair or right, I guess, not fair is not the right word, it's not correct to say, 300 more times. But the statistic is something like our ear has around 300 or 400 neurons that connect the ear to the brain, whereas the eyeball has, 3,000 or 4,000. There's thousands of neurons connecting our eye versus the ear to the brain. What does it mean? When I see a picture, nobody tells me, looking at this pencil, where do I start processing it? Do I start upper, left corner and go left to right, top to bottom? No, I can start processing it anywhere. And, powerful images will elicit all kinds of thinking, and, our brains will be processing right alongside, whatever we're hearing, though it's going to be complementary. Now, I also think it can be overwhelming. CNN doesn't, and Fox News, they do this all the time, right? With here's this headline, and there's a ticker tape thing going, and they've got just so much information going on. So I think you can overload it. But To be an effective communicator today, especially in a classroom setting, if I have an opportunity to use media and to communicate with media and I'm not doing it, it doesn't mean I'm wrong or I'm ineffective, but a lot of times I can be more effective when I use media along with my message. And so that's part of what we want to, I think, encourage students to do with this whole idea of using media and thinking about, the pictures we take for stories. So let me introduce you to Presentation Zen. Have any of you read this book by Gar Reynolds? Or have you heard of it before? So I'm not at all connected to this. I'm not getting any kickbacks from him. He actually lives in Japan and is, this is one of the most important books that I ever read, I think, about communication and technology. And he is trying to end PowerPoint abuse. We see PowerPoint abuse all the time. People treat PowerPoint like it's a text environment. It's not. It's a visual, presentation environment. And so he's written that book, Presentation Zen. I've got a link here to a Star Wars example, and this is something he actually posted on his blog last August in 2010. But if you remember the movie Star Wars, this scene is at the end of A New Hope, which is Episode 4, the first one that came out in 1977. And this is General Dodonna, briefing the rebel troops before they're about to go attack the Death Star. Well, what Gar says is, if we lived in the day of PowerPoint, this is what Dodonna would say. The battle station's heavily shielded, and bullet point 1, the firepower is greater than half the Starfleet, and all this stuff. And then at the end, of course, we'd have a nice bullet point. May the Force be with you. So that's a funny post, but it's making the point that visual media can communicate much better than bulleted text. And PowerPoint is really set up in a way that sort of encourages us to do what's wrong, and that is put a lot of text on the screen. All rules can be broken, and sometimes we need to put text on the screen. But as a general rule, it's a lot more effective to use large images, full bleed images, and a minimum amount of text or no text rather than just put a lot of text on the screen. So as an example, in this session, you all have heard me do this before. I'm not going to go through all these slides, but this is my usual presentation style with images. I'll usually have a very large image. I might have a little bit of text, not always, and then I'll put the citation for where I got the image. And that kind of PowerPoint use is exactly what Gar Reynolds is trying to encourage us to do with his book, Presentation Zen. Now, humor is a wonderful way to help open up our minds to learning. And there is a great, great video, which I am not going to show the whole thing, but it is this fellow, Don McMillan, and it's called Life After Death by PowerPoint. And McMillan is a comedian, and this is hilarious. He does say the word H-E-double hockey stick, so, prepare your students for that. There is an updated version of this. I kind of like this older version, but he's pointing out, let's talk about color schemes, and he shows bad examples of that. And he shows, let's talk about data. And there's horrible graphs that just have so many different, third order effects and flying transitions. And it's kind of like every bad thing you've ever seen someone do with PowerPoint, he does in 4 minutes. And it's very funny, and I like to show that to my students to get them thinking about, okay, maybe we don't need to overdo the transitions, and we don't need to overdo a lot of things that sometimes happen. So the last thing I want to introduce here in this section is called PechaKucha Presentations, and the link that I've provided there on the handout is to the course curriculum that I created last year, and in fact I kind of just iterate this every time I'm teaching this class. So this is the third iteration of it. And what I had my students do was create a PechaKucha presentation. And there are a lot of examples here that you can link to. There's a whole website called pechakucha.org, and there's 245 presentations that are on this one. I have an example that I did in the spring of 2010, which was called What I Hope You Learned in This Class. This is on the website SlideShare. So this is a PowerPoint that I uploaded to SlideShare. And then I used an audio recorder. In fact, I used this very one, I think, to record my presentation. And the way a PechaKucha works is you set timing up on your presentation. You got 20 slides and 20 seconds per slide. That's it. So the presentation will be done in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Students start, you push, present show, and no one has to have a remote control or touch a keyboard because it just, advances on its own. If someone wants to talk about a topic for more than 20 seconds, then you put another slide in, another picture, and, then you got 40 seconds. But I like this a lot because it helps emphasize the presentation Zen idea of use images, attribute your sources. That doesn't guarantee that you haven't violated copyright, but it's what we do as academics. We cite our sources. And in the case of Creative Commons, I want to introduce students to how they can get copyright-friendly images. But on a real practical side, it means our presentations are done in a reasonable amount of time. So once somebody starts, they're going to be done in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Now, to also facilitate this, something I have really enjoyed using is a Google form for peer evaluation. And so students will link to a form that I've created. Before the day, I'll put in the name of the students who's going to be presenting. And this is our rubric that they use. So they evaluate 1 to 5, image selection and quality, pacing and fluency, maintaining attention, did they follow the PechaKucha format, and then they provide some technical and some content feedback, some ways to improve, and some new learning. So what happens here is students give their presentation, and every classmate who's in class is evaluating them along with me, and I take out the student names before I give that to the person. I email that to them. So PechaKucha is a great model. This isn't tell a story in 5 photos. It's give a 6 minute and 40 second presentation with 20 slides, but it's a nice established model that other people in different places are doing. There are some presentations called Inspire events where people are having, I think, 20 slides and 10 seconds each or 15 seconds each. So the people are kind of modifying it a little bit, but it's a great model, and it helps students focus in on the power of the images, being deliberate. I'm going to talk about this topic, so what image can help, communicate that to my audience. So let's talk a little bit about Posterous and how we can set up a project like this, and I'll show you an actual example and how we can moderate it, and then we'll talk a little bit about copyright in our remaining time. Do you all currently at Western have anybody using blogs that are outside of Moodle? I know everyone's doing a lot of Moodle stuff, but is anybody using a blog outside of Moodle on any kind of website that you know of? I want to encourage you. I don't want to be disruptive of, the IT and the administrative decisions about sharing content and how we're going to do things. But I at least want to encourage you to think about the positive benefits of sharing some things from your class outside of Moodle on a public site. One of the reasons for this is, as instructors and professors and teachers, few people like to reinvent the wheel. It's always good to have a chance to see what other people have done and to build on their ideas. And one of the problems that happens when everything we do in school is locked up behind a password is that we are not able to see as much. What are you doing in your, basic technology, digital literacy 101 class, or in your early childhood, child development class, or something like that? And so I really think you can do the project that I'm going to describe in Moodle. You certainly could. You can have students turn that in. But there's a tremendous amount of value in sharing the non-confidential information that we have permission to share and students give permission to share on the open web, not only because of interaction and feedback that we can receive, but also just the benefit of being able to see what other faculty are doing and what people are doing in their classes. So the tool I'm going to recommend to you today, specifically for this 5-photo story project, is a free tool, a free website, and it's called Posterous.com. And I heard about this probably about almost 2 years ago on a webinar that Creative Oklahoma did with one of the co-founders. And this guy, I think, is in his 20s, and he has parents that are in their 60s, and he wanted to help them share pictures as well as other kinds of media with him and with their family. and they were using email, but this whole idea of going to a blog and setting up something and logging in and, linking to something, it was just too complicated. So he decided with his co-founder, we're going to make a site that basically works with email. If somebody can send an email message and they can attach something to it, then they're going to be able to post pictures, audio, and video, and it'll just work. We'll have all this stuff happening behind the scenes. So if you go to the website, posterous.com, just in the past, I want to say 3 to 4 months, this fall, they've renamed it Posterous Spaces, and that's a little bit of a head nod, I think, to maybe to Google Plus, which is having these circles and things. And anyway, they've changed a few things, but basically, you sign up for an account, put in an email address, a username, and a password, and then you are able to have an unlimited number of sites. But the first one that you set up will have the username that you designate, that you create. So let me go ahead and just kind of walk through the process of what this looks like and how this works. And I'm going to point out that I have a link that says set up a moderated classroom blog. I have recorded, and I did this back in February, an 11-minute screencast showing all of these steps. So you can go ahead and refer back to just that part of the screencast, because one of the important things I'm going to encourage you to do is to turn moderation on and to allow other people to be able to email things into this blog. So Posterous is the site that we're going to do, and I'm going to take you through those steps. But before I do that, why don't I show you how it works for students? All right, so let's set the stage. You have decided you're going to do a 5-photo project with students. You've gotten the blog set up. That's the stuff I'm going to show you in a minute. Now you're giving your challenge to your students. Maybe they're going to do the 5-photo charades project. They're gonna pick a fairy tale. Maybe they're gonna pick a movie. I want you to pick a movie that's come out in the last 5 years. You and your teammates, are gonna be able to turn in 5 pictures, and just using props and things that we've got around here, I want you to communicate to it so we can guess what the movie is. Some kind of activity. How are those students gonna turn in their actual photos to us? So what I would encourage you to do is set up a website and then on Posterous, and then give them an email address. And what I'm going to just put in here really quick is the email address that works for this site. I created one. My site is 5photos, if I can spell right, .posterous.com. And I'll make that a little smaller so it's not cut off. So that's the blog address of my site. The only thing I have to do for email is, instead of that first dot, I change that dot to an @ sign. Now, you have to create a unique site. So I've already done 5photos. You can't get that one. But you can choose something else to be your site name, and all of your content gets turned in by sending it to that email address. And this is very clever, because if you've done a project like this with students where they're turning stuff in, it can be a real mess. I mean, you've got lots of attachments, lots of files, and with this particular technique, it's very streamlined. They email it in, and you can just go to the site and approve the submissions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and show you on my iPhone some pictures that I took actually last Christmas. I've got these saved. We went to Santa Fe, and we saw a glass blower who was demonstrating how to make how to blow glass, and he ended up giving us a flower. But here we've got a series of pictures. You do not, by the way, have to use a smartphone to do this. You can use a regular digital camera. The challenge there is, with the digital camera, you're going to have to plug it into the computer, find the pictures, get the pictures that you want off onto your computer, and then go to your email program and email those. So there's more clicks involved if you use a regular digital camera. If you use a smartphone, however, and this is where the ethic of minimal clicks come in, this is a pretty fast process. So let me show you how this works. You are going to, instead of, right here on this picture, if I wanted to email this picture, in the bottom right corner, and I think I can zoom in here, in the bottom right corner down here, there's a little button that looks like a box with an arrow coming out of it. And when I click on that button, I get different choices to send that picture different places. I can email it, I can, use it as wallpaper, I can print it. But in this case, I don't want to just send one picture. I want to send 5 pictures to the same email address, and then the title I give that email is what my post title is. If I put any extra text in here, like, can you guess the name of our movie? That's going to appear on the post. So I'm going to hit cancel here, and instead of being on one picture, I'm going to click up at the top on the breadcrumb for the album name and be here where I can see all of these pictures. And now I'm going to go to this button that's at the top that looks again like a box coming out. But when I click on that, now I can select as many pictures as I want, and I'll go ahead and select 5 pictures. And I can send all of those pictures at the same time to my blog. So I've got a button down here that says share, and if I click on share, my main option to share is email. So I'm going to choose email. It opens up a new message. It has all 5 of those pictures in the same email message, and all I've got to do up at the top is put in the address where I would like to send this. So I'm going to type my address, which is 5 photos at posterous.com. Now, whatever I put in the title is going, or the subject, is going to become the title of my blog post. So I'll put, what is he making? And if I wanted to, I could put other things in here as well. Something that people need to remember, if you have a signature file in your email, you might want to delete any phone numbers or other things that you've got in there. Sometimes it'll happen that people won't take that out, and so I will go ahead and delete those before I post it. But now I'm ready to click the send button and send these pictures. The iPhone will go ahead and reduce the size of these, so I'm going to click large instead of actual size, and that's going to, just make this send a little bit faster. I have now turned in my assignment. I am done. We took the pictures on the phone and we emailed them to the site, and I'm done with my assignment. I have turned it in. And so now what we're going to do is take a look at the website that I already set up and how new posts come into that site. And I just realized, because it is my site and I have set it up, my email address will post automatically to the site. Other people, like students that aren't a member of that site, they're not going to have their posts go up there right away. So I'm going to go ahead and load this page, 5photos.posterous.com, and I'm clicking the reload button. And what should happen if I got my email address right is here before too long. Sometimes it takes a few minutes and doesn't happen instantly. I'm going to see that post appear here on the website. So let me go ahead and show you what the Posterous site looks like and how moderation works, and then we'll talk about setting this up if this is something that you want to do. You can have an unlimited number of sites on Posterous. I've set up a bunch of different ones that I use for different things. I'm going to go ahead and click on this 5 photo stories site so it loads up. And blogs have basically two different faces. You have a public face that everybody gets to see, and then you have the behind the scenes curtain where you get to edit things and delete things and make changes. And so what we're seeing right now is behind the scenes. This is the dashboard of the blog. And look, I can see it says, what is he making? Shared on December 8th. And so it's showing that it's there. Let me go ahead and refresh or reload this page again. And we'll see if it showed up. And yes, there it is. We've got this post. And there are my pictures of the glass blower. And I can go ahead and click on these. And we'll be able to see all those pictures. He was making a flower. Actually, I think he messed up. And he ended up not being able to make what he was originally making, and so he made it into a flower. That is a pretty amazing thing to have students be able to email pictures, and they go up on the website. And so if a student if I didn't have their email address already and have it added to the site, I'm going to have to moderate those. And so let me show you that. Over here on the side of my site, it says you have 3 posts and 1 comment that need moderation. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click there on the 3 posts, and it's going to show me what has come in that people need to approve. Now, these are actually not for my 5-photo blog. One of the things that I have been working the last year or so with for our Scout troop is helping our Boy Scout webmasters be able to post onto our site. And so one of the things that they've been doing is they've been using Posterous to email. You can use Posterous, so if you email it here, it posts it over on our other website. So what I can do to approve these, you can see that I've got check boxes. There's a check mark and there's an X. I can go ahead and read the post, look at it, and when I click the check box, then those posts are approved and they go on the website. And that is called post moderation. There's also a link here that says that I have a comment that someone's made that needs moderation. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and it's going to load up that comment, and it's similarly going to let me be able to comment. Be able to approve it. And I'm not going to take the time to look at that and view that video and make sure that's appropriate, but that process of vetting and making sure, okay, do I want that to go on my site? That's the approval process. So let me give you a little bit of time to talk. What questions do you have, or what do you all think about that process of students submitting photos to a blog, and then how can you think of a different way to do that? Like you might do that within Moodle. What do you think about the facilitation side of this project, the way that I shared, or ideas that you might have about how to do that? I'm going to give you 90 seconds to talk with each other about that. Good questions. I mean, giving your students a chance to share stuff on the open web and talk about these issues is valuable, because the whole thing about how do we take control of our digital footprint, ultimately, I believe each of us who want to have people Google us and stuff that we want them to see have to publish things and share things online and claim it. That's the way that you take control over your Google search results. It is a good.
It just makes you more aware of the responsibility we have with this new identity that we have.
Right, and
which we want our students to also.
And what we want our students to do, and we want to do too, is use it to our advantage, right? If I'm applying for a job right now, and I bet they're Googling me, and hopefully what they're going to find is going to represent me well professionally and help them make an affirmative decision, for hiring. Our students should want that too. And so, it depends on ages, it depends on what they want to do. There's all kinds of variables. I encourage students to share an assignment like this openly. I always give them an out. I say, you don't have to. If you don't want to share this, you can turn that in on our Moodle, or I've used, Blackboard with at UCO, at WebCT. there was a student that was in the course I was teaching at North Texas the prior semester who had thrown a huge fit over not wanting a blog and not wanting to set anything up. And I really, when I encounter somebody with that, my response is, I mean, you can use an alias. You do not have to use your real name. There's nothing you need to put out that will identify you as being with this content. Or you don't have to. You know, we'll have a space that'll be private in our learning management system where you can post it. Because there are folks, and I've taught a lot of non-traditional aged folks, and sometimes older students may be a little more wary of this. We can give people options. They don't have to post out here. But there are good conversations that happen when we do. And there are also interaction possibilities that aren't possible when we're just inside Moodle and with WebCT. Rather than kind of go through all the steps of setting it up, I think I'm just going to refer you to the link that I gave you, because that screencast, it takes you step by step how to set up the blog. There's a key element here that you want to turn on, which is letting other people post but moderating the submissions. And so that is something that I can't put the burden on your IT folks that they're going to embrace this, but this is something that I've given you resources for, and you could certainly ask somebody for assistance. I'm going to challenge you to play with this. Play with this just on your own. This holiday, take some Christmas pictures. It doesn't even have to be of people. Take some pictures of presents, of the tree, of lights, of different things, and experiment with how this works. Really, I think it's naive of folks to think that faculty or teachers at any level can go to a workshop, be shown something, and then, okay, here I go, I'm ready to do this with the students. For me and most folks I know, we've got to work with this stuff for a while. We got to play with it a while to get some comfort, and then we might be ready to do that with students. So I'm going to encourage you, play with Posterous. It's free. There's no cost. You don't have to have a smartphone, but this process of emailing in photos and having content posted there is really remarkable. The other thing that I love about Posterous is I consume a lot of content now, talking about news, blogs, and things on my smartphone, on my iPad. And one of the things that the iPad and the iPhone do really well is they email things out. You can email this article, email this link. And so I use Posterous kind of as my off-board brain sometimes. When I find an article or a video that I like, I just email it to my Posterous site, and it's going to be there. I can search for it later and find it. So as you play with these tools, you're going to get more ideas and think about how they work. But I really think that using email as the way to turn in assignments and content like that, especially media, being able to turn in pictures, because students can turn video links in this way too, or they can turn in audio files. There are file size limits and things like that, but I think it's a game changer, because if I didn't have Posterous and I wanted my class of 25 students to all, in a 45, 60-minute class period, I wanted them all to do this assignment, it would involve a lot more clicks and be a lot more challenging. It's still hard. I mean, it's still challenging to do when folks haven't worked with this before. But I think that Posterous is a great tool, and being able to use email is a good thing, not just for older adults in their 60s, but for anybody. So we're almost at the top of the hour, and what I want to just kind of mention here at the end and really refer to you to some resources is copyright and some sources that you can use for finding copyright-friendly images and encouraging your students to do that. On our site, underneath Posterous Blogs, I've got a little picture that my 8-year-old drew for me on the iPad this last summer for my book with a mnemonic, Harry Potter Can Fly. And the mnemonic here is, if you are thinking about using an image in a project, don't immediately go to a copyrighted image first. Let's go down this list. And the H in Harry stands for homegrown. Homegrown is a picture that we take with our own camera, And if we have the permission of people in the picture to share it, we're probably fine, to share that picture. We have to ask them, is it okay if I share this picture online? If it's, a shoebox of photos that grandma has upstairs, grandma, is it okay if I scan these and share these online? Those are homegrown pictures. The P of Potter stands for public domain. That means things that have passed into the public domain that everybody owns, that no one has the right to restrict access to. Photos from NASA are an example. We as taxpayers pay for those. We all own those. But if it's in the public domain, you can do anything you want with the image. Now, the third one is Creative Commons, and most of the images you've seen me use in these presentations come from Flickr, and they are licensed under Creative Commons. And I've got some links to some videos here that I would encourage you to check out and watch and even share with your students that talk about how confused people are today in the classroom over copyright, how fearful people are over the use of media, and what fair use means. So fair use is, in the United States, the opportunity we have to have a legal defense of violating copyright, but doing it under terms like we are using a small portion. We are critiquing or evaluating and transforming, the work. We are, in many cases, using it non-commercially for a class. There's these different things. So the videos that I have linked here, there's one called The Cost of Copyright Confusion, and that was created by Temple University and their Media Education Lab. It's an excellent video. They also created this definition video, and this is more of like for kids in K-12 school, but it's a song and a rap called What's Copyright, and it's about 4 minutes long. There is a Get Creative video that explains what Creative Commons is, and then my absolute favorite is this one created by a professor at Stanford called A Fairy Use Tale. The whole thing is 10 minutes, but if you go to chapter 4 that starts at the 6-minute mark, this entire video uses 3 to 5 second clips of videos from Disney. And we've all heard about Disney suing people, right? Oh my gosh, how can they do this? Well, this is fair use. They're using small portions. They're using it in a transformative way. They are not using it commercially. They're meeting these requirements for fair use. So those are excellent videos to watch, and those are on YouTube and publicly available. I'd encourage you to use those with your students as well. The last thing I'll mention is at the very bottom of this page, I've got a link to some copyright-friendly image sources, and I'll go ahead and load up a couple of these. My favorite place, this is the area where Flickr has images that people have licensed under Creative Commons. There's over 30 million photos today that have been licensed under the attribution-only license. So I'm going to go in here and type lightning if I was going to do a report about storms or weather, and I'm going to see, hundreds if not thousands of images that are lightning pictures, and these are all licensed so that I can not only use them in my educational project, I could even do commercial things because these are attribution only images, and I can get really large versions of these pictures. Compfight is a search engine which searches Creative Commons, and I just kind of like its interface a little bit better. Over here on the left side, you can see that instead of any license, I can choose to limit it by Creative Commons. And so it is, again, showing me Creative Commons images. I'm just going to encourage you to check these out and to encourage students to be aware there's an option to Google Images. There's problems with Google Images. We don't always know who owns the image. Who's not only the owner, have they given us permission? And sometimes we get surprised. Now, you can get surprised, searching Flickr too. I wasn't looking for that. But it tends to be, I find, a pretty relevant place to search for images. You do an iterative search. What are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about, teachers and the way that we do science activities when we do labs. Okay, well, let's take a look at what can we find for labs for science. Can we find something with beakers or with a Bunsen burner? Or, using those different terms to search. And back to where we started at the beginning with images, using images effectively on the web is a very important part of literacy, being able to leverage this power. So many creative people in the world taking so many pictures, and now so many people licensing those images openly for us to be able to use and reuse. A lot of people don't know this exists. They'll go to Google Images, but the pictures they get might not be good resolution. They might be grainy, and they may not realize there's a lot of other good options that we have in addition to just a Google image search. So I think I am probably at the end of my time. Would you all like to toss out some questions or any thoughts that you'd like to put on the table here at the end of our session? Have I filled your brain or overloaded you?
Yeah. But with lots of good ideas.
Okay. Well, it's easy to be overwhelmed. It's hard to kind of be focused and have one takeaway. And if there's one takeaway that I give for you, it's to play with some of these image tools and consider the idea of finding some way in some lesson next semester to do a 5-photo activity, because your students can do it. I mean, you don't have to do it with Posterous. They could turn it in on Moodle, but you will learn good things having your students do that activity. And I bet they will surprise you, hopefully in good ways, but they will, especially if you give them a challenging prompt that really asks them to do some higher order thinking. Maybe it's to take a concept, maybe you're going to do it midway through or near the end of the term. And you ask them to here's a list of 20 different concepts that we've had this semester. I want you to pick one of them, and then I want you to illustrate this with images. There's different ways that you can do that. And I think we're only beginning to scratch the surface of what we can do here with media, and the potential for us to make learning sticky definitely goes up when we use more forms of media. When we're not just text, we're using images, especially when we bring story into it. There's a lot of chances for that learning to stick, and that's one of the things we want to do with the time we have with students. So, any questions? All right. Very good. Very good. Well, I took the Puppet Pals today to the second grade, and they made some 2 little short videos, and boy, they had fun. And it was 20 years from now, maybe we can't get away with this saying, "Hey, here's a fun app. Let's tell a quick story with puppets." But they were very excited about it, and having kids motivated to spend more time working on their assignment is one of these things Marzano's written about, time on task, right? If we increase the time on task, we're probably going to increase the learning. We need to ask good questions. We got to follow up and do a lot of other things. But there's good potential for media to engage students and get them to work longer on their assignment and hopefully learn more. So hopefully that'll work. All right. Thank y'all very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.